Yes, a very, very good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this special event organized by the Society of Petroleum Engineers Abuja section. Of course, this event is in commemoration of the United Nations Human Rights Day. Today, we gather under the theme Reducing Inequality and Enhancing Human Rights. Of course, this theme is very critical and it speaks to the very heart of equity and inclusion in our society. We are most pleased and excited to have an array of very distinguished speakers who, of course, will bring a wealth of experience and diverse perspectives to this dialogue. My name is Ofofono Akpan. My pleasure is going to be to serve as the master of ceremony for this very exciting program. But before we continue, I'd like you to do me a favor. Kindly go to the chat box. Kindly go to the chat box. Let us know who you're joining us from. And let us know in one word or in a few lines, what do you have to say about reducing inequality and enhancing human rights? What do you have to say about it? In few words, what do you have to say about reducing inequality and enhancing human rights? I'd like to read on the chat box where you're joining us from, which part of the world you're joining us from, and of course, in few words, what do you have to say about reducing inequalities and enhancing human rights? While you do that, I kindly appeal that you share this link to your colleagues and friends. We had about 40 persons register online and we expect them to join, but kindly do us a favor and share the link far and wide. While I wait your kind comments, let me continue the event by giving us sort of safety announcements. I kindly appeal that for the course of this event, you mute your microphone if you're not speaking, so that you may not have interference during our deliberations. We also advise that there will be a time for question and answers after the panel session. Please raise your hands if you want to speak, or drop your comments in the chat box using the C for comments and the Q for questions. We also advise that you ensure you can still hear the fire alarm with your headset, so adjust it in such a way that you can hear whatever is happening in your environment. We also advise that you stay safe, as we're going to have a very safe deliberation. The last and the most important, please, when sending your questions after the panel sessions, please be specific to the speaker who you would like to address your questions to. I would introduce the speakers shortly, but let me go back to the chat box. Let me read what we have from our amazing attendees. We have Kafayat Ademi saying she's joining from Abuja. Reducing inequality and enhancing human rights bring about global peace. I agree with you, ma'am. And I believe most of our attendees agree with her opinion on reducing human rights. Of course, it brings global peace. We'll not have the war we have between Ukraine and Russia if, of course, both countries respected their human rights. So yes, global peace is one of the key objectives of reducing inequality and enhancing human rights in the world and, of course, in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Kafayat Ademi, for that amazing perspective. I'd like to read more of your perspectives as the event continues. While we await your perspective, permit me to continue the event by recognizing amazing personalities that have joined us from all parts of the world to make this event a success. Because when I recognize you, just to test your microphone, I would like to hear your voice. And of course, you can just give a short response. I'd like to say a warm welcome to a very dynamic leader and the driving force behind SPE Abuja section. Of course, he exemplifies excellence in engineering and of course, his steadfast commitments to driving this section forward. Please help me welcome our section chairman, Engineer Ikechukwu Stanley Okafor, PhD. A warm welcome to you, sir. Confirm you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, Akman. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure having everyone in this event. Thank you so much.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Champion of Excellence Section Chairman. We also like to say a warm welcome to a very respected academic and programs chair. She is, of course, celebrated for her dedication to impactful programs and engagements in SP Abuja section. We say one welcome to Professor Kafayat Adeyemi. Welcome, ma'am. We celebrate you, ma'am.
Thank you, Akpan. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am. Of course, for today's event, we have 3 solid panelists and a moderator who will do justice to today's event. We'll start by saying welcome to the Group Head of Audit, Compliance and Risk at Omni Retail Technology Limited. Welcome, Dr. Irene Robinson. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Robinson, of course, the trailblazer in promoting ethical practices and sustainable growth within the business landscape. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting to speak during this event. We also like to say a warm welcome to a human capital development expert. Of course, he's passionate about empowering individuals and organizations to reach their full potentials through innovative talent strategies. We say a warm welcome to Dr. Olusoji Adeniyi. Welcome, sir. Pleasure to have you here. Dr. Olusoji Adeniyi, if possible, you can unmute your mic if you're speaking.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you, sir. The CEO of Anthrop Management Limited is going to join us shortly. We got information that she has a little bit of technical glitch because she's on the roads. She will join us shortly. But before then, let's welcome the man that will serve as the moderator for today. Of course, he combines expertise in journalism with a passion for impactful storytelling and advocacy. Ladies and gentlemen, a seasoned media consultant and of course, an online publisher. Dirac Onifade, a warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Akpan, and good evening, everyone. I hope it will be a very pleasant session this evening.
Thank you so much, our champion moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the event continues. I would like to say a warm welcome to our YP chair who is on the call, Chisom Okoye. Welcome, Chisom. Welcome all other distinguished senior members, board members, student members, young professionals, and of course, captains of industry that have joined today's event virtually. We celebrate you. We kindly advise that this event is streamed on YouTube and of course all social media platforms. You can always visit our YouTube page and share the links to your colleagues and friends. Okay, Ibrahim Omar has said something. Human rights is basic right and freedom for every human being. Types. This is a long one. Civil, political, economic, social, cultural, environmental rights. Importance. Promotes dignity, equality, justice, peace, and stability. I think I can say Ibrahim Omar is the champion of human rights for the chat box today. Ibrahim, thank you. And welcome, Ibrahim Omar, if you can hear me. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome. We love your chat and we love everything you say about human rights. Your Excellencies, very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We see you guys immediately to listening to our chairman. Like I said earlier on, he is dedicated to excellence in SP Abuja section. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if your hands are not busy, can we give a virtual applause to no other than the section chairman of SP Abuja section, Engineer Ikechukwu Okafor, PhD, as he comes forward for his welcome address. Section chair, sir, the stage is yours.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, our dear panelists. Good evening to our dear moderator. It gives me great pleasure. It gives me great pleasure to join you this evening, to welcome you to the commemoration of the United Nations Human Rights Day. As a person, personally, human rights is something that is critical to me as a person. because I'm one who it's almost like a mantra to want to stand on the values that promote human rights, to stand on the very idea that we all should enjoy equality, we all should promote our rights, both the fundamental and the basic rights. So SPE holding this event gives me so much joy. So it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to this event, and I can't contain the joy in my heart at the prospect of what we want to listen to, especially with the array of resource persons we have from the indefatigable Egbodira Onifade, who I have personally followed as a child when I was still, when NTA was like the only channel we had to watch. So, sir, you may not understand, but it's a big pleasure to have you here. Beyond following you in NTA, there's a common ground I may want to speak about being during the last general election. I was a very big fan and supporter of the Labour Party, and through a mutual friend who was in contact with you, we gave our support to the Labour Party. That's on the political side. And to Mr. Shola Deni, Madam Irene, and the other resource person, I want to say a very big welcome and thank you for agreeing to speak to us. Human rights is something that touches on every one of us, and it's something we all should hold dear to our heart. Promoting peace, ensuring that no one is left behind, ensuring that our shared values are respected, ensuring that there is mutual respect and mutual admiration for every one of us. And to the board of SPE Abuja, we can't drop the ball. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep doing what we are doing. This is our call. This is our demonstration of excellence. And on that ground, I want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for joining. Thank you.
Yeah, I was expecting some virtual applause for that very passionate, of course, exciting welcome remark by the amazing section chairman of SPE Abuja section. Of course, it will interest you to know that right from when he was a student at the University of Port Harcourt, our section chair has been a very vibrant fighter for human rights, if I may say that. Welcome, and thank you so much, section chair, for leading the section rights. Ladies and gentlemen, we switch gears immediately to, of course, having the moderator take center stage of these events. Like I had mentioned earlier on, our moderator is a seasoned media consultant and, of course, an online publisher. Of course, to do the honors of introducing the moderator, I would like to once again bring back our section chair to please read the citation of our moderator. Engineer Ikechukwu Okafor, PhD, please, would like to have you do this. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Akpan. Before I start reading the citation of the moderator, I want to state that the usual practice is for the admin to read the citation of the moderator, but I have to personally request to have the honor of reading the citation of Mr. Dira Onifade. It's quite a big privilege to do this. And so I'll go on. Dira Onifade is an accomplished Nigerian journalist with over 4 decades of experience in media and public affairs. A veteran journalist who retired from the Nigerian Television Authority, he is currently a media consultant, independent producer, and an online publisher. He has held prominent roles in journalism, including Vice President of the World Federation of Science Journalists and President of the African Federation of Science Journalists, mentoring numerous young journalists across Africa. With a strong academic foundation in mass communication and business administration, he has also completed executive programs at the Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, highlighting his expertise in leadership and science communication. He has also served as a media as a media and communication strategy advisor to ministers in Nigerian Federal Capital Territory, as well as commerce and solid mineral development sector. Additionally, he has consulted for international organizations, including UNFPA, the World Bank, and Africa Agricultural Technology Foundation, among others. Onifade is a respected leader in public communication, co-authoring the globally recognized book, Communicating Science, A Global Perspective. He dabbled a bit into politics, where he served as the head of media for the Labour Party presidential campaign during the 2023 general election. His expertise spans journalism, media consultancy, and public sector advisory roles, reflecting his deep understanding of Nigeria's social-political landscape and global development issues. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to respectfully introduce our moderator for the day, Mr. Dion Onifade. Thank you, sir. Can you unmute him? He's on mute. You are still on mute, sir. We can't hear you. Okay, mute now. We can't hear you, sir.
Actually, it's not muted. I think the device is malfunctioning.
I noticed the network was poor at a point. It showed a yellow bar. His suggestion would be to log out and log in again.
Try to, okay, maybe you should log back into the mobile phone.
We sincerely apologize for this breach and technical issues. So, a moderator is still trying to come back.
Is it better like this?
Perfect. We hear you, sir. Continue, sir.
All right. So let me once again say thank you very much to the chairman for that generous introduction. I must say it's very generous. You know, it's those of us who are MCs and masters of ceremony that speak in those terms. I do not know that even engineers also can have such capacities sometimes. So thank you very much. Now, we have a very distinguished set of panelists this evening, and very shortly I'll be introducing you to them and introducing them to you. The theme of our discussion today, reducing inequality and enhancing human rights in oil and gas sector, could not be more timely or critical. The oil and gas industry is undeniably a cornerstone of Nigeria's economy, contributing significantly to budget revenues and foreign exchange earnings. Yet, this economic powerhouse also reflects one of our nation's greatest paradoxes. While it fuels development, it deepens inequality and poses substantial risks to human rights. Communities in resource regions often face the environmental and social costs of extraction without adequate compensation, and marginalized groups, especially women, indigenous peoples, and low-income workers, are left out of the decision-making processes that directly affect them. Now, addressing these inequalities demands more than just incremental change. It requires a bold rethinking of how the sector operates, a shift towards sustainability, inclusivity, and ethical responsibility. So today, let's engage in a candid dialogue about how to bridge these gaps. And to lead us in this conversation, I have an array of excellent speakers, and I'm going to be introducing them to you. First, we have Dr. Olusoji Adeniyi. Dr. Adeniyi is a social development and human capital development expert with over 32 years industry experience in education and career, spanning over 20 years in the United Nations system. He worked locally and internationally, serving in 5 countries across 3 continents, but taking early retirement in 2015 to focus on his lifetime passion of developing human capitals and bridging learning gaps. He founded Prime Trainers Africa and Wealthways Consulting as vehicles for sharing knowledge and opportunities for after-service vocation, the Sustainable Development Goals. He believes education is a right, and inclusive education across gender considerations are key to genuine global transformation. As a consultant, he supported the Federal Ministry of Education and the World Bank on early grade reading assessment, EGRA, early grade mathematics assessment, EGMA, education sector analysis, ESA, transforming education systems at states, TESS, National Technical and Vocational Education, TVET, and the National Skills Management Framework Review, among others. He serves as the regional consultant on human capital development for the 6 states in the South region under the HCD core working group of the National Economic Council in Nigeria since 2021. Olusoji is a climate change advocate, education reform champion, and UN certified 6 Sigma trainer and development expert. And he will be talking to us this evening on areas having to do with economic inequality and social disparities. So that's for Soji, but judging by the instruction I have from the organizers, let's have all the profiles out there, and then the speakers can speak back to back in order to save time. So next I move to Dr. Dorcas James. Dorcas James is a globally renowned leader and highly sought after achiever in the fields of training, management, consulting, and business development, boasting an impressive 2 decades of experience across diverse industries. With her expertise spanning talent acquisition, both local and expatriate, training and development, organizational structure and restructuring, entrepreneurial and vocational education development, organizing high-impact conferences, seminars, summits, trade missions, and more within and outside Nigeria across different countries. She has proven herself as a formidable force in driving success for organizations in both the private and the public sectors. She is one of the few global signatories on the United Nations WEPS. Dorcas has left an indelible mark on the international stage, having collaborated with prestigious entities such as the United Nations, where she served as the national consultant to deliver a high-impact program in Nigeria through ITC. Our vast portfolio also includes working with prominent organizations like GIZ of Germany, Center for International Private Enterprise from Nigeria and USA, and the West African Examinations Council, among others, in the public and private sectors on various high-impact projects. Having graced national and international conferences, seminars, trade exhibitions, and business development tours, Dorcas is not only a sought-after speaker, but also a valuable contributor to the global business landscape. Her insightful perspectives and innovation have earned her a well-deserved position on the board of esteemed organizations. Currently serving as the lead consultant and CEO of Anthrop Management Limited, Continental President of Epoch African Foundation, among other organizations, where she has handled diverse roles and projects. She consults for a number of non-governmental and non-profit organizations and has been instrumental in sustainable structures in place, putting sustainable structures in place in such organizations. Dorcas James continues to drive transformation and excellence in the corporate world. Her exceptional track record and remarkable achievements make her a compelling choice for organizations seeking to propel their business. She holds a master's degree in business administration from the prestigious University of Illinois, Nigeria, a Bachelor of Science degree in geography from the same university, as well as a master's degree in geography with specialization in transportation from Nigeria's premier university, University of Ibadan. She has attended several national and international trainings and conferences from notable organizations such as International Labour Organization, among others. She has a PhD in environmental resource management in review. Last but not least, Dr. Irene Robinson Anyawale. Dr. Irene Robinson Anyawale is a multi-award winning legal practitioner and human rights advocate with over 2 decades of experience in advancing equality through corporate governance and sustainability initiatives. Her work has significantly contributed to reducing inequalities, and these works include pioneering groundbreaking gender equality initiatives, leading Nigeria's Exchange Group to become the first securities exchange globally to achieve economic dividend for gender equality certification, championing the IFC NGX Nigeria to Equal program, mobilizing 26 top private sector companies to commit to workplace equality and women's economic empowerment in the private sector, developing inclusive governance frameworks that promote equal opportunities and fair treatment across organizations, creating innovative platforms for advancing gender equality in the private sector, and championing financial inclusion through financial literacy programs that democratize access to market knowledge. A recognized thought leader in corporate human rights advocacy, Dr. Irene Robinson Anyawale was named one of the World Federation of Exchanges Women Leaders of 2022 and received the General Counsel of the Year Award at the 2021 and 2022 Esquire Nigerian Legal Awards. She has held strategic positions, including member of the Executive Committee of Management of Nigerian Exchange Limited, trustee of Nigerian Exchange Limited Investors Protection Fund, chairperson of the legal committee of the African Exchange Linkage Project, and co-chair of the Nigerian Coalition of Service Industries. Currently serving as Group Head Audit, Compliance and Risk at Omni Retail Technology Limited, named by the Financial Times as Africa's fastest growing company in 2024. She continues to champion human rights through corporate governance, ensuring fair practices and equal opportunities. Her commitment to human rights extend to knowledge sharing, regularly conducting training programs that empower organizations to embed equality and fairness in their business practices. Dr. Robinson Anyawale's work exemplifies how corporate leadership can drive meaningful progress in human rights and quality. So, no doubt you can see a very, very formidable lineup of speakers this evening. So without much ado, without wasting much more of your time, let's go to the first speaker this evening, Dr. Soji Adeniyi. Dr. Soji Adeniyi will be taking us on the sub-theme of economic inequality and social disparities. Dr. Adeniyi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. This is indeed a wonderful opportunity to connect with the rest of the world on the International Human Rights Day. And there's no better time to discuss about inequalities, about economic challenges than now. In the last 3 to 4 years, I have had the privilege of being the Human Capital Development consultant, regional consultant for the South-South region in the 6 states of the Niger Delta region, where you have the South-South geopolitical zone, covering states from Akwa Ibom to Cross River, Bayelsa, River State, Delta, and Edo states, and have had first-hand encounter with the villages in the nooks and crannies of the creeks along this region. And I've seen for myself vulnerabilities, I've seen for myself economic disparity, wealth in the ground, and a lot of challenges on the ground. And I sometimes wonder if we could genuinely say that the discovery of oil in that region is actually a curse more than a blessing. But why do I say this? There's a life cycle effect in the entire human life system that breeds vulnerability from inception. In fact, I say it's right from pregnancy, because depending on what part of the world your mother and father conceived you as a child, God help you if you were conceived in any of those villages, rural locations in the Niger Delta or the oil-rich region. The chances are that you would be born in a location or a village where there is practically no primary healthcare facility or hospital that could connect you to a life that is beyond the immediate would. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. If you could adjust your camera, you are quite horizontal to make it vertical. But you can continue, sorry. We hear you.
Is it okay now? Or it's still not horizontal?
Yes, it's okay now.
Okay, good. I had to use the phone because the system was misbehaving. Okay. Let me be sure that this is working. Okay. Please again confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
We are hearing you.
Okay, excellently. So if you ask me, depending on where you are born in any of these villages, you are likely not to have access to primary health care. You are likely not to have the chance of even being delivered by skilled birth attendants. Most of them are delivered by traditional birth attendants, which means that right from birth, they have been limited to access to quality health care. After delivery comes the period of postnatal care, and you will be lucky if either the mother did not go through maternal mortality or the child survives without going through, infant mortality. And going through this stage means that over the years and perhaps in the next 5 years of life, which is the chances that you have to deliver, all the health indicators that the world is looking at. You have to talk about immunization, you have to talk about nutrition, you have to talk about the mental and the cognitive development that a child needs to be functional later in life. These deprivations, these challenges in those regions makes it almost impossible for children born in this area to even have the right nutrition. And when they don't have the right nutrition post-birth, what it simply means is that they're also deprived of the right cognitive development. And when they have poor cognitive development, it means that by the time they get into primary school, they are developing lower than the full potential that they have to engage with lessons that they would need to learn in school. What that means, again, is that that child in primary school, and God help them that they have the right teachers in those remotely located primary schools, which means that the child may have even lost the opportunity of preschooling, which has been found to contribute more than 70% of post-development indicators in every child if they have, gone through preschooling before basic education. What that means is that that child may have poor basic education because there are very few primary schools in some of the communities that we are talking about. In fact, in more than 70% of the communities, there are no secondary educational facilities. They have to go more than 10 kilometers from the remote villages to the nearest available secondary school facilities. Don't forget that this child has been deprived originally of nutritional balance, which means that cognitive development has been slowed. And to that extent, that child ends up getting poor basic education, may drop out between primary school and secondary school because of the distance or because of other economic indicators and challenges that the child may have going forward. So if you ask me, already the economic deprivation did not happen to the child after the child has born. In fact, from the explanation that I give, you would see that it's inborn from the poor mother that may have delivered this child in those conditions in the villages. Now, if you begin to track that child, if by any chance the child finds its way into the university system, the poor economic background that may have led to the child not having all the requisite cognitive dominance in whatever space or area that the child wants to study will again follow the child into the university or the tertiary education environment. And that child may eventually not get the very best educational, outcomes, if at all. So if you look at all this life cycle, you will realize that at the point of entry into labor force, which is the time that the child develops the ability to go, into the space, the working space, and gets a job, all of these connectivities and challenges begins to affect the child going forward. And this child comes back to that same village, finds these parents or caregivers still in the same environment that is both sanitary impulsive, both economically deprived. The cycle is likely to happen all over again, and that is where the issue of connectivity with future economic transitions into the capacity to earn at connection with the developed world comes to being. So the economic inequalities is not only as a result of the father being poor or the mother being poor, it's also the psychosocial development of the child that has been greatly impacted by the unfortunate situations in the environment in which the child had been born. And the only error that child, has is being born in that particular area. So going forward, when you want to juxtapose this with the chances of that child, having the right economic, empowerment to be able to be someone in the future, especially in the world that we are in today. I mean, to become a petroleum engineer, that child needs to go through a university system that would not separate the child from the child that was born right in the city and had all the complement development assistance to the university. So the chance of that child becoming a petroleum engineer is relatively scarce, and the possibilities are, are very limited. So if you ask me, what we are celebrating today, in terms of inequalities, in terms of economic challenges in the oil rich region, is actually something that should call our attention to the social indicators in this space, where we must understand that the challenges that they're going through today and the challenges that they're likely to go through tomorrow is directly entrenched in the environment in which they have found themselves just because of the place or location of birth. And in a nutshell, we need to begin to think about how do we make sure that these communities where this, oil is, the exploration is taking place, the extraction is taking place, actually does what we call the corporate social responsibilities, not just as a gift to the community, but because the government and the rest of us are also, taking advantage of all the mineral, extraction that is coming from there for the development of our cities and our, commercial centers. We need to ensure that the social facilities and amenities in those areas are completely reviewed in terms of their availability and accessibility for the most vulnerable in the communities. And I'm sure that there are several ways in which this can be done. I mean, the Nigerian Petroleum Development Bill tried to address some of these challenges, and I am optimistic that members of this association who may find themselves in policy decision positions within, the petroleum industry or even within the social capital environment will understand that there are deeper concerns around human capital that cannot wait for the time that the child is already in the university or in the secondary school or in technical schools before they can be realized. The damage is often done right from the beginning, where that child is born, where the child has been, deprived of economic development through the limitations in access to health, access to school and appropriate education, access to appropriate nutrition, access to cognitive development that, further limits the opportunity of the child to become who we want that child to become. So I'd like us to put the human face to the discussion and understand that each and every thinking that we have along development in the economic sector that is associated with oil and gas also has the reverse side of those environments that are so rural, that are so backwardly, underdeveloped, and that we need to do something quickly about in order to develop, to move it forward. I'd like to stop here so that, we can have other thoughts. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Adeniyi. That's quite comprehensive within such a short period. He talked about the various economic, social disparities and injustices. These are the kind of conversations we should be having on a Human Rights Day. People are born with several of these rights already deprived them even before they were birthed. They were born.
You are correct.
And all through life,
yes,
you find that not much of correction happens. Anyway, so let's move to another theme now, because we've been talking about a situation where people have been left out from social and economic development. So let's consider issues around sustainability, inclusivity, and the ethical responsibilities on the part of several stakeholders. And to address that for us, let me invite Dr. Irene Robinson Anyawali.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olifade, and I must commend Dr. Soji for such an excellent introduction. So when we're talking about, inclusivity as well as inequality and trying to encourage sustainable practices, I think one of the things to recognize is the link between the activities and operations of, those in the oil and gas sector. That link between their activities and operations and how it affects the basic human rights of individuals and the kind of steps that communities as well as operators need to do to address some of the discrepancies that Dr. Soji referred to. So when we are talking about right to life, right to dignity of human person, right to personal liberty, right to freedom of discrimination, we need to understand that there's a tie between that and the activities that arise as a result of the operations within the oil and gas sector. So when we talk about things to do with, the operations of oil and gas sectors that end up causing environmental degradation. So things around, gas flaring and its effects around methane, around carbon dioxide, and other such greenhouse gases that affect, communities in terms of the type of air that they have, the viability of the, the land and the agricultural prospects, even in terms of affecting biodiversity, in terms of ability to, to fresh water, as well as, the operations of natural life. All of these activities, they are intertwined. And, because these things are being affected by the activities and operations of people within that sector, what it means is that their right to life, because right to life is not just about, right to living and to be able to live your life, but it's also with respect to the quality of life and whether or not you have been equipped with adequate resources such that you can actually have that quality of life, a minimum quality of life. When we talk about right to family and the fact that some of the practices within the oil and gas sector means that there's certain displacements that would happen as a result of activities that would affect, the ability of communities to stay within a certain area. So all of these things are things within that sector. So what should people operating within that sector need to do? The very first thing is to have a recognition that their operations and activities affect every one of these rights that we are talking about. And so there's a direct correlation between the activities and these things. The second thing then is to identify what aspects of our activities are causing all of these issues. So things around the gas flaring that we talked about, things around leaks that happen as a result of oil and gas activities, pipeline integrity that we know as a country, there are various issues regarding things around activities and operations that will ensure that they reduce all of those types of things. And so the very first thing is that even though there are legislations in place that the government has introduced in terms of, prohibiting or reducing gas flaring and methane emission and things like that, but the question is how much of those things are, the oil and gas sectors incorporating and implementing. There's the issues around pipeline integrity and being able to detect leakages that happen that will ensure that there's a reduction in terms of oil spills and how they are affecting communities and areas and things like that. The question is, what type of automation and technology are they introducing within this sector? Now, if you do research around globally, you find out that in certain areas, they have already introduced things like automation around monitoring of pipelines, things like that. They also have introduced anti-leakage systems in place. A lot of those things are still lacking within, our own sector within the country, and those are the kind of things that we need to put in place to ensure that these things are being detected and there's a reduction in terms of affecting of communities and causing displacement. Now, the other thing is even around when all these oil spillages happen, when we notice that there are impacts in the environment, in the air, that the quality of air that is available within those sectors. What type of recovery, and restoration measures are being put in place? Again, there's a huge lack around things like reforestation, things around appropriate types of oil spillage mechanisms to ensure that, in fact, once these things happen, there is a place and a measure by which these things are being addressed. The other thing also is also recognizing, and some of those things Dr. Soji touched on it, in terms of recognizing that within that community itself, you need to introduce certain measures and certain things that would uplift, the circumstance and of each of these communities. So what type of programs are being introduced within these communities to ensure, to Dr. Soji's point, that people within that community are being equipped education-wise, are being equipped skill-wise in order to be able to take up certain positions. Now, we know that there's that whole content and local content legislations across, all of these communities in terms of the number of local contents that should be in terms of vendor supply, in terms of certain types of jobs and things like that. But the issue is that if people are not being properly equipped and educated right from, the initial stage to be able to have the right type of skill and education to do all of those things, then those issues will still be an issue. The next thing is that if you look at the legislation in place, there's legislation that talks about all of these oil and gas sectors having community trust arrangements and agreements with the community. But the challenge we see in terms of those community trust arrangements is that certain segments or certain sectors within those communities are being disenfranchised. And those sectors are basically the women as well as the youth. So when oil and gas sectors are communicating with communities around entering into trust agreements to say, okay, we've come into your host community and we're going to be involved in extractive types of exploration, and we definitely want to ensure that there are some certain things that come to your community as a result of that. You find that in a lot of those agreements, it's being done with only very certain sector or areas within those communities, and majorly the chiefs and all of those types of things, and majorly the men and majorly the older sect. So when you have that kind of discrimination and disenfranchisement of certain people within that sector, considering women that we already know make up more than 50% of the population in Nigeria, in whatever locality or community they're talking about, then you can be clear that whatever agreements that will be reached as a result off the back of those arrangements will clearly
you should be rounding up.
Okay, yes, will clearly not address certain issues and areas that are pertinent to those segments, whether they are women or whether they are the youth within the community. So those are just examples of things around that can be put in place by the oil and gas sector to deal with these issues around inequality and disenfranchisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irene Robinson Anyawale. These are very pertinent issues that you have raised. Yes, I mean, you talked on sustainability, inclusivity, even ethical responsibility from your own background as a lawyer. Now, let me bring in the third speaker today. The third speaker today is Dr. Dorcas James. And Dr. Dorcas James will be talking to us about human rights and vulnerable populations. Human rights and vulnerable populations should be talking about strategies that can protect the rights of communities affected by oil and gas operations, how the sector can address gender disparities and promote the inclusion of women, and other measures that can prevent displacement and exploitation.
Just do this thing. Let me go and wait.
Having
do this thing
for Dr. James.
I didn't do like this now.
Moderator, please unmute yourself, moderator, please.
Yes, Dr. Dorcas James, are you there?
She was on the call. I don't know if she's.
Dorcas James will be our third speaker, and she'll be speaking to us on human rights and vulnerable populations. Is she there? But to be sure, is everybody following me?
Yes, we are following you.
Yes,
Okay.
you. Local James was in at the moment.
Maybe it's a technical issue. Let me start the conversation, and then once she comes in, she'll take it from there.
Okay.
Is that okay, Mr.
Then let me then I can raise some questions.
Okay.
Flowing from the presentation that you made on economic inequality and social disparities. So specifically, what mechanisms can we use to ensure equitable distribution of oil and gas revenues to resource-rich communities? We have been on this conversation for decades, yet we are not getting there. What are we not getting right, and what can we get right?
Thank you very much, moderator. Dr. Irene Robinson, I only, slightly mentioned the role of the trusts that are supposed to actually support the communities, the so-called oil-producing communities. And over the years, in fact, since the 1960s, there has been conversations around why is it that the oil companies are engaging in quotes with traditional rulers in the oil-rich states, such that the traditional rulers are actually, living large because they engage and they get the benefits, but the population, the vulnerable population in these environments are left on their own, basically, because the appropriate development indices are not found in these communities. In fact, there are evidences that even where the oil companies decide to set up schools, you'll find that the children of the rich from the city are admitted into these schools in the environment, and because the children, just like I had highlighted before, from those poor communities, did not have those basic requirements that makes them to be able to fit into those schools. They are also not able to get admission into those schools because they want to take them. They can't even meet the merit lists and the rest of it. So the Petroleum Sector Bill, Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB, clearly provided opportunities for communities to participate in this system that would address some of these inequalities and these challenges to make sure that they can contribute as much as possible to the board running, the commercial running of the oil companies, such that a percentage of their profits is actually supposed to be held in trust, just like Dr. Hiring mentioned. But this is the representation on the trust and the possibility of people, civil society, for instance, to interrogate what is going on there. You'll know that the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, the civil society in oil and gas sector, all of these people are stakeholders that continuously discuss what needs to happen. Just like you have said, a lot are being discussed, A lot are still, in the balance of whether or not it's 3%, is 2%, is 5%, whatever the percentage. The key thing is not how much these communities, can have access to. It is what is being done with these resources. It is who is going to administer these resources. It is who are going to represent the communities in this management of these, resources that have been so assigned to the communities where the development is expected to take place. I would say personally that the need to streamline and make transparent this process such that civil society, even from outside of the Niger Delta, can have access to the amount of money that is going into this space, to the amount of development that the corporate social responsibility of the oil companies are supposed to deliver, such that there will be a kind of monitoring and tracking of what is supposed to happen versus what is happening on ground. And then, if need be, they may need to start, taking to court some of these traditional leaders who have been found wanting in not delivering the results that they are supposed to deliver, either by being members, on the board of this trust. Because this trust can do nothing on its own. It's just money. And money thrown at problems never goes away. It is when, you deliberately have clear pathway to how to use the money, and then there is an accountability framework where people can come in and question, investments and divestments and mismanagement of funds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on. When there is so much issues, such as even trust deficit within communities, we are not even talking about community versus government now. We are even saying within communities.
Yes,
if there is
intra-community
problem, it follows that some people will be at the bottom rung of the ladder. Those who will suffer the impact the most. And we're talking about the women, we are talking about the children. Let me get to Irene. So this particular group of people, how do we address the disparities affecting women and children, for instance, gender disparities and the inclusion of women particularly, because if the women are taken care of, the children will be taken care of?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Mr. Onifade. So I think it's, first of all, being extremely deliberate. So I'll give you some examples of some of the incidences that are being seen in terms of the extractive industries and, the women. So there's a particular extractive industry in which one of the things that they do is that the women, are engaged to carry out some form of labor. And it was noticed that, a lot of those women would carry their children and their small babies and bring them to the sites. Because they are deep at work, they will just leave those children and then go off and be doing all the things they need to do. Now, part of what was realized that some of those children that were being left to be doing things were actually then, playing with dirt, maybe almost touching and licking things that they shouldn't really lick. You get what I mean? So that example, number one, what could an oil and gas sector do in that type of incident? It's maybe to set up like a crèche of some sort within the premises there, where workers, women workers that are coming in can actually drop their children there, have peace of mind, and know that they are being addressed. Now, could that crèche also double up as an education center to what Dr. Soji said, where these children are being given certain things, educational, they're being equipped educationally, and dealing with that whole education issue. So one of the things that, oil and gas sectors need to do is to have more deliberate and inclusive programs targeted at women, knowing the challenges that women face. So first of all, having a quota that ensures that women are the ones, 50 or 60% of women are engaged in terms of certain areas. That's number one. And ensuring that they then put in place certain features that ensure that their children and their young ones can be catered for within the system. Now, those kind of things help to bypass some of the challenges we are facing with trust agreements. Now, secondly, the other thing that they can do then is even in terms of, one of the programs that was mentioned on this forum that we did with companies was that it was recognized that in the manufacturing sector, it was found out that women were not seen in the factories and handling certain senior positions within the factories. And there were various reasons for it, aside from the fact that there needed to be policies put in place to make women comfortable to be able to work in those factories. The other thing was also that there was no training program directed to ensure that certain women, maybe from youth corps level or graduate training level, were being trained and equipped to be able to handle certain positions. So what can oil and gas sectors do? So in those manufacturing sectors, under that program, they then designed programs where they were bringing in certain women in that area and ensuring that they were being groomed up. So almost like a graduate trainee program or a graduate trainee program, a women trainee program that is targeted at filling gaps that we see that women are not being seen in certain areas within the oil and gas sector. And so that kind of program also needs to be introduced within the oil and gas sector and ensure that the women that are going through that program are from the communities themselves. So that itself also needs to be done. And by then, as you're addressing those women-related gaps, you're also addressing the system. The third thing is even in their procurement cycle and their procurement level, how much percentage of the procurement across the various spectrums are targeted at women-led or women-owned businesses. That also is very critical, for you to, and the other things are not just women-led, but also ensure that it's within women within that sector and that community and that area. Then thirdly, also ensuring that you're rotating it such that if you have like maybe certain people that have gone through some certain women-led programs, women that have businesses that have gone through that program 3 years, then you rotate it and bring in fresh ones, you get. So these are the types of programs that oil and gas sectors need to introduce. You can see that they are deliberate, they are targeted at women and by extension, also their children, so that you are bridging the gaps within the system.
Okay, thank you very much, Irene. And I must say that we can take question and answer now. We have a few minutes for question and answers to the speakers. Obviously, we have not been able to get our third speaker to come on stream. So if anyone will want to ask a question to any of the panels, please let's just raise your hand. And while we are doing that, let me also just maybe ask a question that both of you can take in 30 seconds each. This boils down to industry practitioners. I mean, we've done policy, we've done law, we've done all kinds of things over the years, but it does seem there are some ethical issues around that industry. So
Sorry, we can't hear you, Mr. Nifade.
Yeah, since we lost our moderator.
Wrong there.
Okay.
Mr. Nifade, you are muted. Mr. Nifade, can you hear us?
So I think he has a little bit of.
Yeah, you can see that it's okay. Are there questions in the chat room, or is there anything that we can take in the meantime?
Okay, so since there are no questions, I want to confirm nobody has questions here. If you, just in case you have questions, once again, please, questions has started about 10 minutes ago. So please, we're wrapping up question and answers right now. Do us a favor. If you have a question and you want to speak, you can raise your hands. But if you don't want to speak, just drop a chat in the comment box. Okay, we have our D&I chair on the call. Oh, she's left already. Farida, are you still there? Probably as D&I chair would have something to say about or a question to ask. She's left the call already. Okay. I think to wrap up, I could just ask a final question to the both speakers as their closing remarks, and we end the panel session. So I think the question for both of you as the wrap up, okay, would be, Sir and Ma, how do you think individuals, organizations, and governments can work collaboratively to reduce inequality and enhance human rights in ways that ensures tangible and sustainable impact? That will be a question for the both of you, and we'll call it a day. And your closing thoughts, please. 2 minutes, and then we are done. How can individuals, organizations, and governments work collaboratively to reduce inequality and enhance human rights in a way that ensures tangible and sustainable impact? So I think we'll start with Dr. Irene and then Ogasoji, and then we are done. 2 minutes, ma.
I think, one of the ways to work together is that I believe that there needs to be more monitoring by the government in terms of those trust agreements and the way in which those trust agreements are entered into, the kind of community representatives that are being pushed forward by the communities. I think, I'm aware that a lot of the oil and gas sector, companies try and push back in terms of the people that are being brought to the table, and even in terms of some of the requirements that some of the communities give in terms of what they feel the oil and gas sectors companies should do. But what I see is that they don't, they try and push back, but at the end of the day, the communities then insist and say it's our community. But again, we know that there are gaps within that system. There's a lot of mismanagement happening. To what Dr. Soji said, there's not enough research going on in terms of what type of programs actually that those communities need. So I think government needs to step in terms of those areas to ensure that, number one, the right people are being in the room, the right programs are being implemented, and then that tracking and monitoring needs to be there. The second thing I think I believe should happen in terms of collaboration is that we need to bring more automation into the system, just in terms of being able to identify leaks, identify measurements in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted off the operations and activities of this oil and gas sector. Because there are things that you can see in terms of all of these things we are talking about, disenfranchisement, education, healthcare. But there are also those things in terms of the long-term effects that these types of greenhouse gas emissions and environmental degradation is happening on those communities. And we need to have more automation in terms of detection, automation in terms of implementation, and also we need to have better blueprints in terms of how these companies are actually carrying out about restoration in terms of those things. I think those two things are critical in terms of collaborations to ensure that those in those communities have better life expectancy and have better quality of life in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma. 2 minutes well spent. More automation and, of course, better blueprints. So, Gasoji, 2 minutes. Let's hear you, sir.
Okay, confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. I think, across the three strata, that is individuals, communities and of practice, as well as CSOs, and then what the government can do. I'll again take us back to the Petroleum Industry Bill, because that's what we have at the moment. That is a guidance into the operations in that space, and it provides for every one of us as Nigerians, to actually ask questions around how the environment is being treated in line with what Dr. Irene says. If there is automation, who monitors the automation? Who, challenges results of remediations of, the grounds that have been polluted? Because you need to understand that economic activities is directly linked to the livelihoods of the people. And if the ground is polluted, the water sources are polluted, then it simply means that somebody has to be around there to track, even if it is automated, because automation will need to be managed by human beings. And then, of course, reporting and calling to attention. Automation simply makes it easier to track. But then after it's been tracked, who moves in to do remediation and the rest of them? They're all individuals that need to not sell their conscience, because there's a lot of money in that space. And that's where, challenges comes in. So civil society organizations, people who care about human capital development, they need to move into that space and begin to think along, circular thinking. How do we, for instance, go and upgrade the aquaculture from the normal fishing that the people in the communities are doing to higher level of, sea level aquaculture, high level of, intensity in terms of greenhouse farming and the rest of them that are not dependent on the environment, but that, that environment can play a role in economic empowerment of the people, especially women, because they're always the most vulnerable. You would know, if you have been in that region, that the men, love life. They just want to tie their wrapper and have, akpeteshi, that is freshly brewed in the morning, and they're just having, so long as they're connected to somebody working in the oil and gas. So that, is where people need to get interested. Then I would suggest technical education as the type of education that is needed in that region, because of the challenges that I have mentioned in the development of the children, in the psychological and the cognitive development of the children. They are more likely to be able to take technical education as a vocation with self-interest driving, their outcomes. And they can become, underwater engineers. They can become, technicians that are, going to manage this automation space once they are trained in the technical areas. Don't forget that most of the countries that produce even these equipment, they teach them in their local languages and all that. So it's not English language that is going to determine whether or not we make progress in that space. We need to find a way of doing technical education that could be taught in the BBO language, that could be taught in the local languages, and ensure that more and more people get technical skills that they can use even for farming, for aquaculture, for greenhouse farming, and the rest of them. If we do that, and then we get government to hold accountable the various systems that are already there, then we will be able to move forward. That will be my finishing thoughts this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soji. Akpan, I don't know if I'm back in the loop.
Yeah, please continue. We have one hand raised, okay, so you can pick him up and then round up, sir.
All right. Some of the, I would say that from your own end, just pick one or two people to ask their own questions or make their own contributions before we round off.
Okay, sir. So just because we don't have time is not in our favor. We'll just allow Wahid Lawal to give us probably a contribution, 1 minute contribution, Wahid. Or if it's a question, please let us know who you're directing it to. And that will be the only contribution we'll take. Others can look for our speakers on LinkedIn and send them private messages. Wahid, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. My background may be a little bit noisy. Just pardon me, I'm on the journey. Yeah, I didn't read the synopsis, but I've been trying to understand. I have an understanding of what inequality means, and I've been trying to marry it with what has been discussed. I don't know. I really need to understand this term inequality. Is it pertaining to employment of females to males, the ratio of employment of females to males, or is it the ratio of sharing formula between inhabitants in a particular community? I've been struggling to understand that. marrying it to what all the speakers are saying. But I want to go down memory lane. You know, there is a perception of fathers towards girl education. They say the school is not the place for the girl. And that is a decision at the family level, which is the core or the nucleus of the community. Having such, how do we overcome such limiting barriers because it has set a basis for inequality against the girl child. What role will the petroleum industry, the oil and gas, play in those interior communities that some of this thinking is predominant? What role is the oil and gas going to play towards breaking these limiting barriers towards girl child, which exposes them to all kinds of benefits economically, socially, and the rest of it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Wahid. I mean, Dr. Adeni, Dr. Anwale, do you have maybe 30 seconds each in response to him?
Okay, if you don't mind, let me take a first shot and tell him that everything we've been talking around inequalities is not just about the gender inequalities. It is about lifestyle inequality. So the inequality sometimes affect the women and the girls more than the boys, yes, because of the reason that you gave, where the family discussion is always around the boys as the breadwinners of the family, and they believe that the girl will go away and become somebody's wife, and therefore, they don't want to invest so much, let the husband do the investment and, reap the reward. And I think the oil and gas industry has been, challenged around this area. Even just like Dr. Irene said, the workforce, do not have as much women in that space, thinking that it's highly technical or highly risky, and therefore, we need to de-risk that area. We need to get them to have, girls' education, girls' training, in any of these technical areas that we're talking about. There has to be special programs for girls, and they can give them scholarships and enhance their ability to learn faster within the region. And I think that will address some of the challenges that you are raising. Thank you.
Okay. Irene.
Okay, just to say that, there's a general definition for inequality that captures everything. So it's basically where the resources, opportunities, rights, and privileges are not distributed evenly among individuals or groups of society. And so that's why you see that inequality will cut across economic inequality, it cuts across social inequality, not having that equal access to education, healthcare, housing, some of the things we've talked about, gender inequality, even political inequality. And we've mentioned that in the sense of host trust agreements, and there's political inequality there, where only a segment of the community is able to sit down and take decisions around the kind of development programs that should come to the community. So that's really what inequality is. And you can see we've touched economic, we've touched gender, we've touched social, we've touched political as well. I hope that also helps, Wahid.
Okay, thank you very much, Irene. I think it's been a very good conversation, I must say. Even though today we are focusing on the oil and gas sector, but we might as well be talking about our nation, because all these inequalities, people being left behind, the social and economic injustice, they are not just an oil and gas thing. It's a Nigeria thing. And we need to also address all these things with every opportunities that we have. Thank you very much, Dr. Soji Adeni and Dr. Irene Robinson Anyowale. It's been a very good conversation, and on behalf of the organizers, I'd like to thank you very much as I hand over to Akpan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that our moderators, our speakers did an amazing work. Please, can we give them some virtual applause? Thank you, Dr. Irene. Thank you, Oga Soji. Thank you, the able moderator, Diran Onifade, even though network was trying to make it a little bit challenging. Thank you. so much, Mama. Of course, to your assistant at home, your wife. Thank you so much for assisting us. To our amazing speakers, we say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not a part of SP Abuja, I think this is the right time to join. Our speakers, I hope you will be part of SP Abuja. So SPA, as you know, means Society of Petroleum Engineers. And of course, we have several professional member benefits and of course, student member benefits. Of course, to be a member of SP Abuja, new membership fee is about 86,500 Naira. Renewal is about 69,500 Naira. Please take a screenshot of what you see on your screen so that you can message our membership chair so that you can be a member of SP Abuja section. For those renewing, please have a screen of our membership account number so that you can send your dues. And of course, we would attend to you in 24 hours. All of our technical programs are live on our YouTube channel. Of course, SP Abuja section 199. We are live on Facebook, X, Instagram. Of course, we are also accessed via email, Gmail, spabuja.info@gmail.com. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our programs chair for her closing remark. Professor Kapai Todemi, would like to hear from you, ma'am.
Good evening once again, everyone. Wow, it's been 1 hour of very, very rich conversation. I didn't expect less based on the lineup of panelists I have, starting from the moderator to our esteemed panelists. I want to say a very big thank you to you all for the very rich conversation. Like I always say, once you are part of a conversation or a panel session, you must have a takeaway. For my own takeaway on this discussion is we need strategies or adequate strategies for monitoring of trust agreements. That in a way is a chain reaction that will lead to sustainable development and bring about the equality or kind of reduce that inequality we're talking about. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for your time and for your passion for coming to speak to us and sharing your rich experience and knowledge on this SP monthly technical meeting, and also to celebrate the United Nations Human Rights Day. And to all my ESCOs, board members, starting from the section chair, publicity, programs committee, I thank you all for putting this together and have a very wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Section chair, any final words?
My final word would be a word of gratitude. I mean, it's amazing sitting here listening to this amazing resource person. I wish we could have this physically. I wish we could have this for a longer time. I had to make all of my students join because I told them you must join, and I'm taking an attendance, and you will see a good number of them join. Yeah, because I wanted them to also understand that this is part of what they should push for. Inequality doesn't rest in just gender. It is economical, it is in every facet, and they should start championing it. And so you guys have done wonderfully well. Ogadio Onipade Eshegon sir. I have to speak to you about because I know why I did that. I'm excited. I'm just chuckling because having someone I watched over time be here with me in the program, in the section, I'm the chairman. It's a big one for me, and I hold out. I say gratitude to you. Thank you so much, and that's my final one.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We take a group photograph, but before then, tomorrow, join us by 5 p.m. for the Dr. Chukwudu Ubani Student Paper Contest. You're going to hear students give amazing solutions to energy problems. So please, this event is tomorrow. As usual, take a screenshot so that you can have the registration link and you may register. We come to the end of this event, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, we'll take a group photograph. We kindly appeal that you turn on your video cameras. Everybody, please turn on your video cameras so that you may see your beautiful faces, and we take a screenshot for documentation purposes. Thank you. Thank you. Please turn on your video cameras, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're waiting for you. And so when I say SPE Abuja, you respond with culture of excellence with your thumbs up. When I say SPE Abuja, you respond